Hey, how's it going, guys? Domino Paris 21 here, and back with yet another deck profile for you all. So, as you see here, what I have to present to you guys is my updated Shadow Paladin Revenger deck for post-G Booster Set 3. So yes, the core of the Revenger deck hasn't really changed too much necessarily in comparison, to Legion era when Blaster Abyss was first introduced. But of course, with the release of Strides for the deck from G Set 3 and the Legend deck and a few other cards from the Legend deck, the deck has definitely have more options presented to it, and definitely with the support that it's got. As always for Shadow Paladins, although it didn't get a lot of support, it did get the right quality support to once again make it one of the best, if not arguably the best deck coming out of G Booster Set 3. So yeah, it feels good to be a Shadow Paladin player, always getting the right quality support, but whatever, I'm not complaining. So yes, without further ado, let's actually get to it. So for starters, of course, we are gonna, still be sticking with the Judge Bao Revenger. He's still, honestly, I think the best starter in the game, just for what he presents to the deck still. Being able to tutor into even more expanded options in combination with your Grim Recruiter Stride, making one of the most dumbest combinations, I'd say, in the game. Which I'll show you guys how that combination works towards the end of the deck profile. But I can tell you, these two guys essentially can get you a free field without having to commit anything from your hand, and extra draw power, which is kind of dumb. So it almost feels illegal at times when I pull it off. But I'll show you guys how that works at the end of the profile. But yes, Judge Bao still a must-play. He is the best starter in the game, like I said. Next for grade 3s, of course, we are still sticking with the 4 Phantom Blaster Abyss. So yeah, he's still one of the best Legions in the game, alongside with Thingsaver. Just having the ability to Legion, shuffle triggers back, and restand is still amazingly viable. And although you do, of course, have access to Phantom Blaster Diablo, the deck win condition is still Phantom Blaster Abyss. So, because honestly, Diablo, for how powerful he is and how he can really force your opponent to play a certain way just to play around in skill, Abyss is still going to be the ideal win condition, especially when you're looking at the later stages of the game. Although there are situations where you can really force a Diablo to really get through to your opponent, which, again, it's another thing I'll explain towards the end of profile. So at the end of profile, I'll explain certain plays you go for this deck. So yeah, so you're still sticking with the 4 Abyss. And then we have the 4 Mordred Phantom. So we're still sticking to the same grade 3 lineup. So Mordred Phantom's still fine just because, he's still a Phantom, which triggers the Judge Bound. There really isn't any other good options anyway. And most importantly, it's very important to make sure your Judge Bow is consistent. Consistently go off the minute you ride your 3, so that's very important. And Mordred is honestly the best break ride to play with Stride, just because he actually is still beneficial after you Stride, because obviously using his ability to tutor, give that tutor unit a +5, you still retain that ability obviously after you Stride, but you still, like I said, retain that win condition of having the option of break riding and just double attacking with Abyss for +10. So like I said, your win condition is still going to be Phantom Blaster Abyss a lot of the time, so you still want to have that option presented to you as well. That's pretty much a straightforward grade 3 lineup. Next up for grade 2s, of course, we're going to stick with just the ever so standard 4 Phantom Blaster Revenger, or Blaster Dark Revenger, and 4 Blaster Dark Revenger Abyss. So Abyss is actually very important, especially now, because, well, he's always been good, always important and always amazing, just because being able to snipe key starters or key grade 1s a little bit early on, potentially, turn 2, still amazing, and, it's definitely one of those safety cushions that I really, really like for this deck, because any card that can allow you to have answers to cards you don't like is always good, so you definitely got to run 4 of these each. That's standard. Now, the next of the grade 2 lineup, there's definitely a few things I was trying out, and I know there's different preferences of, what players prefer. So, as long as you have, good, confident, logical reasoning for it, I mean, this can honestly be whatever you want. But what I am playing, I am still sticking with the 2 McCart. So, initially I was testing out Maka, of course, the Generation Break 1 on boosted attack, call a grade 1. Shadow Paladin coming straight out of the Legend deck, but a few things I didn't like with Maka is you know, there's pros and cons, honestly. I think Maka is a good, solid card, but there's a few things I didn't like about her that made me want to kind of take her out. Is one, counterblasting can be pretty tight in this deck, especially between these guys when you actually want to use it with Phantom Blaster or Diablo, which, you know, if you're able to use both these guys in combination, in the end it can cost about 3 counterblast, and obviously you want to use Abyss, so, and Judge Vow, so, you know, although you can unflip, counterblasting is still very tight just because now you have more extensive use of your counterblast, so it's hard to really utilize Maka. And also at the same time, the fact is that Maka is not a Revenger can sometimes hinder my plays, just because obviously I can't use her as like a sacrifice column for Abyss, so sometimes I have to like make some really weird like setups just to play around that fact. And also the fact is that I really want to keep my Grade 2 lineup as Revengers because, like I mentioned with Abyss, he's very amazing to open with so that you can snipe out any important starters your opponent has, or Grade 1s they may drop down early, which in this meta there's a good handful of starters among like the top decks out there that you really want to snipe out before your opponent has a chance to utilize them. So I don't want to be stuck like riding the Maka and then it takes away my Abyss play. Like, I hate when that happens to me. So, you know, if there's a card in my deck that hinders a lot of my key plays that's really important to me, I usually end up not playing it in the end. So Makard, of course, is free, and he recruits Revengers, and he's a Revenger. So we're still sticking with him. And the last, like, Grade 2 is kind of like a tech card, and it's a new rare for GB03. That's Android Revenger Tyrone. I'm Tyrone. But yes, he's definitely a card I kind of want to try out, you know. Pretty situational for the benefits he brings, but I think he's very interesting to at least try out. But he may end up coming out for like another card or maybe another one. But I'm trying him out right now. But what he does is when your Vanguard Legions, you may pay the cost of Counterblast 1, and you pass the red text ability here to your Vanguard, which reads when your Vanguard attacks. When your Vanguard attacks, your opponent chooses one of his rear guards to retire. If he does not or cannot, then they cannot call anything to the Guardian Circle. So obviously, you know, you really want it. I only play one of because it's very situational, because it's really more ideal in a very, very late game scenario where your opponent is forced to block Abyss twice, but particularly when your opponent's at like 4 damage or higher, because obviously, you know, not only you're extracting, you know, a good amount of defensive resources from your opponents when you're making that big push at them with your restanding Legion, on top of that they're losing rear guards. So there are actually times in testing where I was able to swing momentum like greatly in my favor against a lot of matchups, especially aggro matchups, just because we're back and forth, and then when I'm finally making my push to my opponent, you know, I'm forcing out his hand just like he's forcing out mine, but the difference is now like he's losing rear guards kind of like alongside me. But he could definitely be pretty game-changing at times. But like I said, he could be a little situational also in the counterblast. You know, it's only like one card in the deck and it's one counterblast, but he's a little bit situational, but I think he can definitely get you there, which I feel like that's good enough to at least, you know, try it out in the deck. So still testing him out, but I definitely would suggest trying him out for all you guys out there. Next for Grade 1s, we're still sticking with the Revenger Maclear. Now initially I actually wanted to play Karma Collector, which is your unflipping G Perfect Guard for Shadow Paladins, but a few things that kind of you know, I'm still a little iffy about. Like I think I may end up trying it out, depending on my lineups. But like if I do play Maka back in the deck, I may consider just playing her, because one, the artwork's cool. But the one thing that obviously worries me is the fact is that it's not a Revenger, unlike this here, because one, you know, like although you're obviously Perfect Guard is gonna be the last card you're gonna call from your hand when you're trying to make your push with Abyss, but there are situations where, you know, you're forced to call this from your hand because you really need to make that push for game. So I never want to be caught in those situations where I don't have enough Revengers to do it. And although yes, you have a card that can recruit cards for you, nonetheless, you know, like I say, for cards, like if a card can potentially cause a hindrance for some of my key plays, then, you know, I usually just don't consider it at all. So I feel like this is just more consistent for you. And obviously, you know, Laurel is scary still, and I guess the Cross, but mainly the fact is that it's a Revenger. It's the main reason why I'm playing it, for the reasons that I explained. Next for Grade 1s, at least for Revengers that is, it's going to 3 Masquerade, 3 Doranth. So I'm still sticking with the 3 Doranth, just because, like, you have even more ways to tutor into it, honestly, and I didn't want to I didn't want to cut any more of the Masquerade to make room for the 4th. So I found the 3 to be perfectly fine. You can run 4. I mean, that's still preference, but I found the 3 to work perfect for me. And again, you know, the grade 1 lineup is pretty tight for me just because of other card I wanted to play in the deck. And as for the 1s, we are playing 2 Dark Card Trumpeter, Swordbreaker. Of course, Dark Card Trumpeter is the new card coming from Legend deck. Really fantastic card. So what it does is when it's placed on rearguard, if you have a Blaster Vanguard, you Soul Blast 1, Superior Call at grade 1. So really good. Obviously net +1, which is really fantastic. Too bad it's not a Revenger, but if it was, it would be kind of stupid broken. Triple R, SP, like $50, probably if it was. But yes, really glad it comes in the Legend deck, and it's really amazing. And we are still sticking with the 2 Swordbreaker. I was actually thinking about even taking out 1 and keeping it to like 1 and maybe make room for something else. Because one thing I like with the Dark Card Trumpeter is that, like this between Swordbreaker, like Trumpeter does give you the same +1 that Swordbreaker does, but it's not a random draw. Better base power at 7k, and also at the same time, like if you draw into Swordbreaker, like it sucks, like it doesn't do anything. But Trumpeter, if you actually draw into Trumpeter, at least it can do something for you. So that's kind of different. So I was like almost thinking about like running 3 of these, 1 of these, but I still like the double Swordbreaker just because if you are first to ride grade 3 before your opponent, then at least you have the option to just, you know, go with the regular Judgebow and just go double Swordbreaker if you're not striding it. Now, the combination I was explaining earlier with one of your key stride units, where is he? They all look the same from a distance. Grim Recruiter. So Grim Recruiter is when he attacks and hits your opponent's Vanguard, Superior Call at grade 1 from your deck. So you can almost kind of figure it out if you actually never seen this before. I'm sure a lot of you guys have already, but I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys anyway. But yeah, basically, here's how it works. So this is all we have. Now, obviously, if you boost and attack with Judgebow, it hits. So Judgebow's skill, count +1, put him in Soul. You can Superior Call like a Swordbreaker and a Dark Card Trumpeter. So then Swordbreaker lets you draw a card. Dark Card Trumpeter, you can like get another Swordbreaker and use that, draw a card. And then Grim Recruiter skill is that he does let you to, he does Superior Call a grade 1 for you. So you can just call a Dark Card Trumpeter, and obviously you get another one. So I mean, you can get 2 attacks off, or I mean, just a free board in general, which is pretty ridiculous. Or you know, you can go Trumpeter into Swordbreaker. But that's kind of like what I end up doing. Now, it's usually rare that the combination is really dumb, but a lot of times, like I usually have something I want to call like another grade 2 or something like that, because you know, if you attack this alone, then you risk getting perfect guarded, and then like, you know, you kind of miss out on, you know, some damage you could have done to your opponent. So you definitely don't want to like rely too heavily on it, but just the fact is that you have that ability to do that. I mean, it's pretty crazy. So that's why I say Judgebow and Trumpeter is kind of really dumb. Like you almost think it's illegal at times, but yes, it's pretty much how that works. And it's the main reason why this deck is like really amazing. Now moving on to strides. So it's like organize these because all of these look the same to me because of like all the color scheme and artwork and everything. Can't even see any of their faces. Alright, so of course we have the Grim Recruiter, 2 of those, as I showed you guys. Main reason why I like 2 is because, well, simply put, if the first time it does not hit with the Judgebow, well, you have another chance to do it again if your opponent's at like a low damage count. So that's the main reason why I play the 2. And I usually end up going to the second one quite often. And next, we have the new stride for set 3, Orgeyser Dragon. So really like this card a lot, although I don't use it too often as I would have thought. But nonetheless, like Orgeyser Dragon's really good, and it's a really amazing first stride. So usually what happens, depending on how the game plays out, who went first with their stride or the game state, you either go with Recruiter or Orgeyser as your first stride. Now what Orgeyser does is when he attacks, you Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, retire 2 rear guards, and reveal the top 2, and gain power for every grade 1 or less, and then add the cards to hand. So you're basically replacing those 2 cards that you're retiring, and yeah, it's pretty good. So the reason why I like him is basically here's the scenario. So if you, let's say you're first to ride grade 3, and you actually successfully get Judgebow off, and then you usually go Judgebow into double Swordbreaker. Now, the thing with Swordbreaker, of course, is that Swordbreaker is not a Revenger, so you can't use it with Abyss. So the next option is you can either, well, wait and then just use it for Diablo fodder, but I remember before when you had sword breakers on board, you used carts or something to replace them, or sometimes you have to replace carts from hand. But with Aura Geyser, now you have the ability just to, you know, clean up all those cards, which are probably useless anyway later on, and just replace them for like nice for pluses to your hand, which is great. Same thing goes if like sometimes I'll go into like a Trumpeter and just go Trumpeter straight into Swordbreaker, just draw, and although there's a weak column, you know, it still net me like a +2 just from this combination alone, and then, you know, I just attack like a rearguard, attack something, still an attack that goes off, and then I just replace them. So Aura Geyser is really amazing. The only reason why I'm just not playing for them, just because he does cost a Soul Blast, which, you know, if you actually resolve all your Trumpeters and Swordbreakers, you end up using all your soul that you can't use for him. So that's why you only play one set. But there's definitely more often times than not that he's very useful for those for the reasons I just mentioned to you guys. And then of course you have the stupid boss unit himself, Diablo. Can't find his head because like all this artwork on it. But yeah, Diablo. I mean, I'm sure you guys already know what he does, but you pretty much activate as an act of Counterblast 1, and then Persona Flip him, and then when you attack, he gains. You sacrifice 3 rearguards, any rearguards, and he gains +10 in a crit, and your opponent has to sacrifice 2 rearguards. If he does not, then they cannot guard his attack. So the reason why I say he's not a main win condition for you is because, you know, your opponent obviously can still perfect guard, and although yes they're losing rearguards, if you really want to push for game, that's that one turn, he's not necessarily a card designed to do that unless for the situation that I was trying to mention before. If your opponent, let's say, has 3 rearguards, all you have to do is just use Abyss, snipe out a booster, and use Blaster Arc Revenger, hopefully in combination with the Doranth, to just, you know, make his skill only Counterblast 1, and then activate his skill. So with 3 Counterblasts, you're able to take out 2 rearguards, leaving your opponent with just 1 rearguard, and then you just, you know, kill them. Or if they have 4 rearguards, you know, if you're able to snipe 2 and then clean up the rest of their board, make them call more from their hand, use up their hand, you know, use more cards from their hand, and then you can just, you know, kill them with the Abyss next turn. So, you know, Diablo is kind of like the setup to either, you know, to set yourself, he either sets you up to, you know, potentially win the next turn, as any like control like card is, or he could just potentially just flat out win the game right there. But what makes him really dumb is the fact is obviously that he forces you to, you know, call rearguards when you don't really want to, because, you know, a lot of times, especially when I was playing against opponents, they're forced to call like 10k triggers from their hand just because, you know, they have to be able to pay for his cost, and they are mindful of my Blaster Dark's abilities. So yeah, Blaster Dark Diablo. I honestly don't think he's as game breaking as people like to hype him up to be, but nonetheless, he's still a very powerful card and something you definitely got to keep in mind when you're facing Shadow Paladins. But there you have it, guys. Probably not the most exciting deck, but nonetheless, I was still able to talk long enough, I guess, for you guys. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really honestly do appreciate you guys, you know, checking out the deck profiles and everything. I'm really glad that I can really be like, I guess, an information source for you guys for deck profiles. But mainly I just really enjoy sharing my my decks and experiences with you guys. But yeah, as always, guys, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. That's always appreciated, and definitely subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And on that, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.